Intelligent, the roundtable where AI headlines meet hot takes, and no one leaves without having their ideas challenged. I'm Hannah Wolfart, your host and professional wrangler of strong opinions. I'm joined by my fellow PIP IQ teammates, Josh Cohen, our paid ads wizard, Dalton Smith, our maestro of marketing mayhem, and Edwin Bevins, guardian of brand sanity. Each episode, our guests will break down this week's biggest AI stories, from the game changing to the just plain weird, and figure out what it all means for the way we work, market, and live. This is where smart ideas get debated, bad ideas get roasted, and AI hype gets a reality check. Let's get into it. Our first story today, Microsoft AI product sales are missing growth goals. So Microsoft struggled to hit aggressive sales targets they had for Azure Foundry AI platform. This is an enterprise system for building AI agents. According to the information, many Microsoft sales reps missed steep growth goals, prompting speculation Microsoft lowered their quotas. Microsoft publicly denied lowering quotas, saying that the report mixed up growth and quotas. But investor confidence dipped. The underlying signal is that AI agent tools are booming in theory, but real enterprise adoption is lagging. The information, which is the publication the story is from, noted AI adoption struggles at private equity firm Carlyle last year, in which the tools would reliably connect data from other places. The company later reduced how much it spent on the tools. So we're seeing big firms like Carlyle not being able to adopt. Microsoft isn't the only one facing this reality. Every major AI player, including OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Salesforce, and Amazon, are pushing agent tools, but traditional businesses aren't adopting them at the same pace as the hype cycle is suggesting. This is one of the earliest public cracks in the AI agents will change everything overnight narrative. So, questions for the group. Dalton, why is enterprise AI adoption so much slower than the hype cycle suggests? What are the real blockers? Is it tech, data, change management, or is it trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think enterprise AI adoption is a lot slower than the hype cycle suggests because it's at such a large scale. I think the enterprise lags that hype because I personally think that the blockers are kind of organizational rather than technical blockers. That would include, fragmented data, unclear business cases, and kind of like the lack of trust in the outcomes, which all three kind of slow deployment. Most companies, experiment with AI pretty easily, but scaling it requires teams to rewire their processes, kind of, the people that are responsible, and then even accountability, in those tasks of which they're completing. So it's kind of just far harder than just straight up buying a model.
Edwin, does the shadow AI problem signal that end users want AI? They just don't trust their tools the company approves. And by shadow AI, I mean tools that are unapproved by their company. They're using AI that the company doesn't know about.
That's definitely part of what's going on with shadow AI. Companies are going to roll out maybe kind of their approved tool, and it might be this kind of top-down process where, hey, this is what we're doing now, guys. Here we go. Whether that's actually the right thing to be using or not. I don't know if trust is part of it, but there's more than just trust as a factor there. It's also um, comfort, familiarity, the right fit for what people need. The company might be pushing a tool just because, oh, we have a contract already with this company, so we'll just use their AI tool. But maybe that AI tool isn't actually the right fit for what their employees actually need. And so shadow AI is just people looking for the path of least resistance. What is the thing that actually helps me do my job? So it's very much a bottom up versus a top down kind of thing. It definitely shows that the demand is there, but that the process that a lot of companies are using to implement these pilots and these new tools, it's not necessarily the right way for a lot of these companies.
And I think we saw that with Carlisle. They tried to adopt an AI tool and it just didn't work for them. And that's a large enterprise trying to adopt something. And there needs to be a change to either the way where the enterprise is adopting or the model itself. And it's like, where's the rub? Is it in the adoption or in the infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean it could be one of those things. There's all kinds of steps along the way. It's like, all right, in the early phase, like as you're evaluating what you're looking for an AI for, did you go really and vet the tools versus what you actually need? Did you work with your employees to see what are the things with Shadow AI, your employees are already using these things. It's a question of, do you realize it? Do you know what they're using? Did you really go out there and say, hey, what are you guys using? And that might be kind of point you in the right direction. Did you properly train people on the tools that you are rolling out? Did you really set people up to succeed? And did you have a clear plan for what you want AI to do and these, kind of KPIs and goals and things that would actually make it successful? There's all these different failure points along the way. It doesn't mean it's impossible, just means that it is pretty easy to fall at one of those stages, and then you're left wondering what happened.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Dalton, talk to us about our next story, OpenAI calling code red.
Yeah, so Sam Altman is officially in code red mode. According to reports, OpenAI leadership is hitting pause on side bets in health, shopping, and advertising to focus entirely on one thing, which is make ChatGPT better fast. Why the urgency? Competition is tightening. Google's Gemini 3 is topping benchmarks and rapidly scaling. Anthropic is exploding in the enterprise market, going from under 1,000 business customers to 300,000 in just 2 years. Even with 800 million weekly ChatGPT users, OpenAI is suddenly fighting for its lead. Meanwhile, OpenAI's valuation hit nearly $500 billion. The company committed a jaw-dropping 1.4 trillion to future infrastructure. Altman says that they need to build now to win later, but questions are rising about sustainability. OpenAI claims it's on track for 20 billion annualized revenue and aims for hundreds of billions by 2030. However, publicly, Altman says everything's fine. Privately, the memo calls for a full company sprint to shore up ChatGPT. This is the first visible moment where OpenAI admits we could potentially lose ground. So for Josh, has OpenAI been stretched too thin chasing side markets like health and shopping instead of mastering its core product?
I think it's more of a financial debacle here and rather than a time management one. I think OpenAI is going after these quote unquote side markets, health, shopping, ads, you name it. They're setting up these, you know, partnerships or these big projects with other teams, and that's just a way for them to be more flush with cash or protect themselves. Again, it's not a one-way relationship or partnership. They are getting things in return for what they're offering, but I think it's a way for them to, again, build up their cash reserves or protect them from some sort of AI bubble meltdown. But like I said, this is a financial thing. They're not, recouping money as fast as they're spending it. And yes, a lot of these companies' valuation is based on what we think they'll be in however long. That doesn't work for any human walking around out here. If you go to the bank to get a loan or get some sort of valuation, it's based on what you currently have, not like I could be a billionaire in 10 years. So you should give me a loan based on that. These valuations are based on what we think they're going to be. So I think OpenAI, yes, I'm not, shooting them down entirely. I think there are health applications here, shopping applications here that they should be going after, but I think it's two-sided. One, it's how innovative can we be, but we're also trying to pad ourselves in case things hit the fan with other companies. And I think perhaps, yes, to your point, I think they've been spending more time making partnerships than really focusing on like why are we not recouping our spend as much as like a Perplexity or another company who's again their books aren't clean in the slightest or they're not totally in the black, but they're a little bit better off than OpenAI is. I mean, maybe that's the price you have to pay for innovation. But yeah, I definitely think they've been focusing on other things than working on the quote unquote core product. But I don't still know how focusing on the core product is going to like cut costs for them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So for HANA, what happens if infrastructure commitments outpace enterprise adoption? Are we heading towards an AI capacity bubble?
I think right now, OpenAI is committing trillions to future infrastructure on the assumption that adoption will skyrocket, but enterprise adoption has never moved at that same speed that founders want it to. It moves based off of things like trust or things like compliance when you're talking about an AI tool. So there's risk of that capacity bubble, but not because AI is a fad necessarily, more because the infrastructure growth is so exponential, but the enterprise behavior stays linear. We know that bigger companies have trouble adopting tools. They're not as nimble and quick. And so with AI outpacing them, there's going to be a gap there. If AI infrastructure runs too far ahead, a few things could happen, including exposing real adoption blockers. That could mean that companies' data isn't ready, their workflows aren't consistent, they're having trouble adopting because their teams don't trust the tools yet. I think that's a big reason a tool like PipIQ is really useful because it's a tool based off of making your data private, and that is going to be a barrier for teams is worrying about their data and their compliance, and PipIQ kind of solves that problem for small teams, and it also is easy to adopt, so that kind of crosses over that enterprise barrier that we were talking about. If the infrastructure grows faster, then organizations can fix those problems and that gap widens, but we're not in a bubble, we're in more of a buildup. And I think that those players that can close the adoption gap, not just that infrastructure gap, so like focusing more on getting the companies adopted and fully integrated with a tool, less so on building up the tool, focusing on the basics first is going to be more important and ultimately win out.
Yeah, I agree. I think this brings up an interesting point because, as we've seen over the years, enterprise adoption is kind of, lagging behind personal adoption. But with the adoption rates being so high for these AI products, specifically, OpenAI, it's interesting to see how the enterprise adoption rate will follow suit because the individual adoption has been so high. It's going to be interesting to see like what persuasion the personal or individual, adoption has on each of their companies. Because we all use it and we've brought solutions to our company. And like PipIQ, for instance.
And that's a great point, Dalton. And it reminds me of what I was trying to say earlier is that the companies that are just focused on infrastructure will eventually have to partner and merge with one another because they're outpacing the adoption and there's going to be no outlet for those companies. And we've
Right.
seen that happen before in things like telecom, where there's now just like two or three major players rather than smaller companies being able to compete.
All right, I'm gonna kick it over to Josh for the next story.
All right, guys, let's take a look at the food QSR space. So Dave's Hot Chicken, for any of you Nashville hot chicken fans. They're rapidly expanding their use of AI across nearly every part of their operations, from drive-through ordering and mobile apps to robotic fry stations, drone deliveries, predictive wait time modeling, even AI-assisted review responses. Hopefully, they're not using it to do surge pricing, but everything else sounds great. So the CTO, Leon Devoyon, I'm probably butchering that last name. Sorry, Leon, is aggressively deploying new tech, but with a clear philosophy. AI should amplify human hospitality, not replace it. So the early pilots are showing measurable upside, including kiosks that are lifting check averages by 6%, predictive wait time tools that are getting 7 to 8 more transactions per week. But the CTO is equally focused on reliability and ROI, insisting on backup infrastructure such as local edge devices to avoid AWS meltdown outages like we've seen recently that have paralyzed other brands. He's candid about the limits too. Robots are still expensive, Copilot isn't fully mature, and some tech has yet to meet the company's strict ROI thresholds. So the broader industry context echoes this tension. AI adoption is skyrocketing across sectors, but outcomes remain inconsistent. JLL even reported that while 92% of real estate companies now run AI pilots, only 5% achieve their intended goal. So Dave Davion's approach shows a grounded path forward. Ambitious AI integration powered by discipline, human oversight, operational clarity, and a deep respect for data reliability. So, Edwin, why is a restaurant chain executing AI more pragmatically and successfully than many Fortune 100 companies?
I'm so glad we get to talk about this little fun story. It's nice to hear and start talking about a success story. I feel like we've had a lot of talk in the last few months. You know, there's the story, all the pilots that are failing. Oh, this isn't working. This isn't working. Hey, let's talk about what is working. This is great.
We're the media, Bevins. This is how it goes.
Negative cells. I get it. I get it. But so looking at this story, it was interesting to see just how much it lines up with some of the things we've talked about what makes it a successful pilot and integrating AI into your work. And if there's several things going on here, number one, they have these very clear use cases that they have defined that have direct impact on ROI. So like you said, we're talking drive-through, mobile ordering, the fry station, inventory management, all these things that there's a very clear objective, there's a clear thing we want it to do, and we're gonna see how it does. And we're gonna apply. It's not just we're using AI now. We're using AI to do this. And then when that succeeds, we're gonna use it now to do this. And you keep kind of getting that snowball rolling down the hill. What I also love in this specific industry is how fast the feedback loop is. Like you see very quickly what is working and what isn't. Like if suddenly the line of cars at the drive-through is backed out onto the road, that tells you that your system's not working. Whereas if you can see that things are going faster and orders are more accurate, okay, this is working. What's the old saying? We're all in marketing. Half of my advertising dollars are working. The problem is I don't know which
Which half?
half, and so this is a situation where you can see what you're doing is working and what isn't. And so that really helps to make it a more successful integration.
Yeah, I am in complete agreement. And I think another important thing to discuss is that we've talked about this before, is the term AI. Again, AI is not new, but the context is that we're talking about them now, perhaps is. But machine learning has been a thing for a hot minute. And by minute, I mean several years, 10 years even. And a lot of machine learning has been just relabeled AI, which it is. It's not generative AI, it's more of an analytical AI. But a lot of the AI that we're talking about in this instance is more of a machine learning, feed the data, analyze it, quicker so I can make a decision and put guardrails versus you know, give AI everything and it's going to replace humans. Like that's not what this is. It's, we're better together than in a vacuum. And I think this industry and some other industries, and I'll shoot a question at Dalton about this, but there's other industries where we can quote unquote pragmatic AI. You can fit it. AI generative or not, it thrives on patterns and prediction and context. The more context you give it, so if you have an industry that's heavily context laden, I mean, they all are, but has more things like medical, finance, you name it, the more, it's going to have to work with and be able to predict and analyze and make better suggestions versus one that's highly nuanced, highly instinct based. Those are going to take a little bit more coaching time, et cetera. So yeah, I totally get it. But machine learning is nothing new. It's just gotten so much better. And that's where I kind of see this AI acting as. Speaking of that, so Dalton, is this a model for practical AI that industries like healthcare, hospitality, finance, et cetera, will copy?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the approach that Dave's is using for the future of AI, it's not flashy, but it's rooted and it's deeply operational. I think, industries like you just mentioned, healthcare, hospitality, finance, they will all try to copy, what they've done and sort of the same pattern. They'll use AI to standardize their workflows, to reduce their errors, to optimize their staffing, to make better informed decisions on financial investments based on data that they're seeing. improving customer experiences, as patients, things like that. I think that industries will differ in the tools that they're using, because, as we know, all of the industries are different. Finance comes with, important financial records. Healthcare comes with important patient information. So I think that, yes, back to the question, I think this approach is the future. However, I think that many tools will be used, but I think the operating model is going to kind of be the same.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and I'm completely agreeing. And I think just like another important consideration, regardless of the industry we're talking about, is, and going back to kind of what Hannah was saying, it's weird. There's like two competing narratives that are going on. It's everyone is using AI, AI is everywhere, but then but then we're not having full adoption, or adoption's being abandoned, or it's not hitting the goals that we want. I really think the issue is, yes, AI has to catch up. It's not going to just plug and play into every industry, into every personal business circumstance. It's going to take time. But remember, it's a tool. Like, it is only as good as the people leveraging it. And let's be honest, not every business person, human, employee, whatever, is right for that tool or knows how to use the tool. And just the same way, not every company has set certain goals and metrics and things to judge that by. So if you come in and just say, I'm going to adopt AI and my business is going to make, 2000% more money this year, and I'm going to fire everybody, like, those are not realistic goals. Those are just like buzzwords. But I think the industries that are like, hey, we're going to apply AI for goal ABC, hospitals, less bed turnover, less, mortality rate, or financial. We're going to increase our investment portfolio by 5%, just some realistic sort of goal that we can apply that one thing to and only do that thing. I think you're going to have better success. Right now, I think it's like, let's just apply it in every facet and see what happens. And then they go, wow, it didn't just improve everything overnight. Screw it, get rid of it. So I think that's kind of where we are. We're not being realistic, and we're not learning. We're just like blindly, not we, just royal we, kind of just doing it that way. So again, I think the industries that are more on a metric side of things, or they have things that they can play with and let the machine learning play, I think it's going to be an easier shoe in than something else. But yeah, it's all great points.
Something else I wanted to mention, that came out of the Dave's article, that I found, pretty unique, was that the CEO, Devoyan, also stated that he rolled out Microsoft Copilot across his corporate office. And he mentioned that he's not completely sold on the maturity of the technology. And he stated, I think that there are other solutions that we should potentially explore. So, Devoyan, if you're listening to this, FIQ can help you out.
Well said. All right, Edwin, finish us off with our last story of the day. Can AI ever be funny?
There we go. Let's do something fun here. AI and comedy. So right now we're seeing we'll call it a mini boom of AI comedy. You got comedians that are using it to make videos, parody songs, you name it, trying all kinds of different things. But what you'll see, even among the comedians who are embracing, uh, to varying degrees, at the very least, they're using this new technology, they're still insistent that the actual humor has to be coming from humans, from themselves, that the AI tools just are not actually funny. Maybe I don't know if you guys did the same thing. There was a trend going around a while ago. Pull up your favorite AI tool and tell it to tell me a joke. And the results, they were not great. All of just nothing that ever really seemed to be actually funny. And it gets to something that's about how complex humor is, that most people, even some of the comedians that have talked about this, they can't exactly describe what's not working, but they all agree that something's a little bit off. Maybe it's corny, it's not provocative in quite the right way. Some people describe it boring. It's just not there. Um, but they're still using it because it's very useful for things like getting fast delivery of, video production takes time, and an AI video that to deliver a joke that you've already written can be done way faster. Then on the other hand, there are comedians who are fervently against this stuff. You have comedians who are suing AI companies for copyright infringement. Even worse, I think the estates of some deceased comics, like Robin Williams and George Carlin, are suing over deep fakes and unauthorized voice cloning. That's pretty gross. Um, but overall, despite that dark tangent there, comedy and AI might seem like a light topic, but I think it gets at some really interesting discussions about AI more broadly. So, a couple questions I want us to talk about. First, for Hannah, so we're seeing comedians who are using AI tools in various creative capacities to deliver the joke, but the AI can't come up with the joke. So, what do you think this has to add to the kind of ongoing discussion we have about what kind of human perspective we really need in order to make AI succeed?
I think it makes it glaringly obvious that we need the human perspective, that there's proof in the comedy that AI can't replace human perspective because humor isn't just about things like structure or timing. That's part of it, but it's also about point of view, experience, and a kind of emotional IQ that the AI models just don't have. But that translates into every other facet of work, life, anything too outside of comedy. We need that human perspective. AI can imitate the mechanics of a joke, but it can't feel the same things that comedy comes from: discomfort, tension, the cultural context of things, self-awareness. AI doesn't take risks in the same way a human comedian might take risks. Even in the story, the comedians said in different ways basically that AI can help bring an idea to life faster, but it can't originate that idea that makes people really laugh. They used AI to animate a talking baby and a dog, but the humor didn't come from the talking baby and the dog. It came from the comedian behind that, his perspective, his EQ, his brain connecting the dots that like the machine just won't be able to. And that's that human perspective that I think is so valuable. And comedy really highlights how valuable that is. AI can scale our output and make us faster, but it can't scale our point of view, and it can't add a point of view that we have from our lived experiences. So, if anything, I think it just puts more emphasis on the fact that AI is a tool and we should treat it as a tool, not as a replacement.
Absolutely well said. Yeah, it's we're there for the person and for their point of view and the way they see the world and think. And so I think this is just a really neat application of this idea that we've talked about in other contexts.
Also, if we're getting dad jokes from ChatGPT instead of Josh, I don't want to live in that world.
I only tell dad jokes because I can't say half the jokes I want to say. So we'll leave it at that. If
And
they want the
AI
dad
could
jokes,
definitely not come up with those jokes.
yeah, no, that's true. I don't I just don't think, I mean, never say never. I just don't think I'm an avid comedy event goer that people would sit in a room and just listen to a box tell them jokes. I feel like, I mean, now there's whole sets of comedy that are crowd work, which crowd work is total human instinct. You can't even prepare for half that kind of stuff. And Robin Williams, especially, was like the king of improv. Um, so I don't know. Like I could definitely see it telling you a knock knock joke, things like that. Stuff that is replicable, and yeah, has a structure, but there's so much that is unstructured, that's funny in our world. So never say never, but I think we're far off from that.
Never say never in AI. That is one thing we've learned. So, Josh, one more question here on this topic, kind of taking this a slightly different direction. Let's apply this to, what we so often talk about, which is, businesses and AI. Does the gap that we're talking about here on the comedy side between the AI's capability and the AI's, let's just say, judgment, that we're talking about, does that also contribute, you think, to the struggles that so many industries and companies are having with AI adoption?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, remember, and I talked about this 5 minutes ago. AI is a predictor, pattern recognizer, context-driven system, right? At least right now. I'm sure they're working on, like I said, an unstructured model that just kind of learns and grows with us. But right now, it only can do what you give it. So that's where we're learning, like the machine learning side of AI, the non-generative side of AI per se. It's really good. We've had it for forever. It's being fed all this information, so it seems highly capable, right? Or heck, even the generative stuff. It's feeding off thousands, millions of searches, responses, whatever your prompts, so to speak, and it's churning out good stuff, and it's getting better every minute. But judgment, and remember, judgment is a subjective thing. I could say one of you has bad judgment, but that's just based on my understanding of you, or I have bad judgment. Um, but either way, like in an industry, some people think judgment is something that can only be learned over a really, really long time. Or I like to think judgment is a mix of learning over time and then instinct. And do we ever think that AI is going to actually have not human instinct, but some level of instinct? And again, for me, if I think judgment is something that you can learn over a long period of time, AI can get there for sure. But will it ever have that instinct for this to be replicable or something resembling instinct? Either way, uh, that's kind of how I see it. And different people are going to have different ways that they think of judgment, but I think there's still some sort of a gap. And again, the closer you think judgment is just something that can be learned and it's not just innately within you, the more those are going to be separate. Uh, and either way, I think this also, to tie it back into everything else we've talked about already, the gap between that aside is all the expectations. What do we want AI to do, right? Whether it is capable and has perfect judgment or not, if you don't have clear goals of what you want it to accomplish, that's the inherent issue in why the adoption is all over the place. It's not, oh, it can't do it. Well, again, if you judge a fish by its ability to fly, you're going to be disappointed every time. If I'm judging AI by its ability to turn my business overnight into a smashing success and replace all of the work I have to do by tomorrow, I would be sorely, sorely disappointed. And I think that's where a lot of people are. We're also in this weird time economically where we don't know if things are going up, down, or sideways. So everyone's just hedging their bets. But either way, I think the expectations are off of what we want it to do. And I think the ones that are more realistic or are more niche or are using it for a certain reason, again, that's why we develop HipIQ. It's specifically for business, your documents, your stuff, your data. It's not trying to paint pictures. It's not trying to write, a eulogy for your grandma. It's really just trying to get your work stuff done and just stuff in your department, in your company, and not anything else. It's not trying to be too big or too small. It's just trying to be it. So I think that's where we're going to have, more success. So I think things in the market that can help people have more realistic expectations, whether the AI is capable or has the right judgment or not, that's going to win. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And the more expectations are off, the worst time you're going to have.
That's yeah, I'm with you 100%. The very first question, and I feel like it's something that comes up all the time, is what is it that you want AI to do? And when you don't have a clear answer to that question, things can go in a million different directions, and most of them are not the right one.
Yeah, it's like relationships, marriages, anything you name it. You could be a capable partner. You can have a good head on your shoulders, the right judgment. But sometimes if you don't go into things with the right expectations or like what you guys both want out of this, it's going to be a bad time. So I think that's where we're at. We're in the dating phase.
Thanks, guys. All right, now it's time for debate of the day. Today's question: who is AI ultimately going to benefit most? Individuals, small companies, or mega enterprises? Edwin, you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll go first, and I'll stack rank everybody, and I actually have it in the exact order that you just said it. Individuals number one, small companies number two, and then the mega enterprises number three. That's not to say that, mega enterprises aren't going to benefit from it. And I think right now, currently they probably are benefiting more than the small companies just because they've adopted faster. Um, but I just happen to believe that in the long run, the smaller the scale where the AI can be as close to the user as possible and their individual goals, the more effective it's going to be, as opposed to having to balance the individual and the organization and the tool itself. It just gets more and more complicated. And so I think the biggest gains are going to come at the smaller scales.
All right, Josh, you're up.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo Bevins here. But I'm more so I really think it's gonna benefit individuals, at least in the short term. There's plenty of people that are still like, I don't want to use this tool or this thing. I'll be fine without it. But I really think you're gonna start to see a gap between individuals the more you lean in to AI and you suit it to your needs. I'm not saying use every tool for every facet of your life and job, but I think the more you lean in, right now it's an individual game and the success of a small company, large corporation, yes, it all depends on, what are the guardrails and the things. But let's be honest, all the work in a company is not just done by AI operating in a side office. It's done by the people on the ground, period. So again, this is a tool and maybe like the best tool we've ever seen. But I kind of liken this to the early ages of the computer. We're in that stage right now where not everybody had a computer. Everyone's like, oh, that person's got a computer, but I don't even know how to turn it on. You got to do coding. It's like before Windows. I'm talking about like where you don't just have Word and Excel and these easy programs for like the average person to use. It's like not for the experts, but it's the people that really like, I need to apply this and figure out a way to use it. And you go and look out there, there's not one playbook to making this right. So it's all the people, big company, small company, single person, personal business use, whatever, that like dive in and are like, how can I use this in my life and in my work and do better? We may see where AI gets more user friendly than supposedly it is, to where every Joe Schmo can use it and use it well. But I think right now we're in that, like, again, that early internet, early website place. And I think individuals are going to reap the reward. So yeah, the companies that have individuals that are willing to get their hands dirty and dive in, and the companies have the guardrails for them to succeed in doing that, those are going to win. But right now, I really, it's an individual game.
What do you think, Dalton?
Yeah, I think actually benefit all three groups. However, with that being said, I think that the individuals and the small organizations or companies will gain the most, while the enterprise or the mega companies will gain the most economically. I think small companies typically lose to enterprise because they have fewer people, less capital, less expertise, slower processes, things like that. Whereas by implementing AI, it completely erases those disadvantages. 5-person teams can now look like 50. Operations become more efficient without that headcount that they previously were missing. Product developments can accelerate without the need of large teams. So I think overall, I think all of the groups are going to be benefited, but I think the small companies are going to gain the most, from introducing AI.
I totally agree with you, Dalton. I think small companies will benefit the most from AI or will have the biggest impact on that level. And I think that's because of what we've been talking about all episode is that adoption factor. Individuals can adopt it the fastest, but I think where it will serve that most impact is at the small company level because it has the ability when it's adopted properly and it can be scaled to teams and not just one person. It can save so much time, effort, energy. And I think the point is that the small companies can learn how to use AI in a way that the enterprises aren't ready to yet. I feel like at the enterprise level, they're trying to use AI in a way that can replace humans and can take away jobs. And at the small company level, I think there's a bigger opportunity for AI to be used to enhance what humans are doing and to allow humans to be more creative and to do the human thing. So that's my take, but it sounds like we're all on somewhat of the same page. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Privately Intelligent. Stay tuned for more from us and follow PipIQ on socials. We'll be back with the next episode of Privately Intelligent in a couple weeks, and that will feature one of our business partners. So stay tuned for that. and we'll be back. Thank you.